This presentation is titled Social Skills, Parents and Students Together, and will include tools to get you through the day and help you promote social learning. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a major impact on the lives of families worldwide. Uncertainty and changes like these are difficult for anyone, but especially for those with autism who tend to rely on structure, routine, and predictability to navigate the day. The goal of this presentation is to give you tools and strategies to help you get through your day and promote social skills at home. From lighthearted fun moments to displays of upset, each and every day is filled with opportunities to teach social skills. If we think of behavior as communication and undesired behavior as a sign that a skill is missing, we can take stressful moments less personally and see them as teachable moments. Thanks to some great curriculum I used as a teacher, I found that using social vocabulary is very useful in talking with kids about social skills. I've listed a few on this PowerPoint and included a link if you would like to see more. Teaching kids to be social thinkers can help them learn that whether at home or at school, the people around us have thoughts and feelings that can be different from our own, and that our behavior impacts the thoughts and feelings of others. Explicitly teaching the hidden rules can help kids with autism know how to behave and understand why certain behaviors are expected or unexpected in different contexts. Instead of talking about behavior as good or bad, we can use the words expected and unexpected to describe it in certain situations. Sometimes behavior can be expected in one location, but not another. For example, talking loudly and being silly while playing tag outside is expected, and people have comfortable thoughts about us and feel safe in our shared space. The same behavior at the dinner table may cause others to feel uncomfortable or unsafe. The rest of this presentation will dive into the following 4 strategies: identifying and addressing emotions, daily schedules, first-then strategies, and social stories. These can be very helpful tools in teaching emotional regulation, creating structure in your home, and explaining the hidden rules of social interaction. Included in this presentation are links to some great resources if you'd like to learn more about any of these topics.
Another tool to help you through the day is to help your child develop self-regulation skills by learning how to identify and address their emotions. A common way of doing this at home would be to develop a relaxation corner somewhere in your house. These corners usually include somewhere to sit and relax, activities to do, like fidget spinners, puzzles, or games, and visuals on the wall to help a child get back to green or regulate their emotions. So as you can see, they kind of have visuals and words to help the child identify their emotions and what to do next. Here are some examples of visuals based on the zones of regulation that you can find with a quick Google search and help your child identify how they are feeling. The 4 categories of emotions are typically blue, so tired, sad, depressed kind of behaviors. Green, happy or calm. Yellow, which is nervous or anxious or excited, so just a little bit elevated. And red, which would be aggressive, terrified, or mad. Anything that's above and beyond and a behavior that needs to stop immediately. Once a child identifies what category their emotions are in, they can pick an activity that will help them get back to green. So, for example, if they're feeling blue, they can try some of these tools, like taking a break, talking to an adult, listening to music, asking for a hug. Even if they're feeling green, they can do activities. So like working hard or just showing expected behaviors. If they're yellow, there's some activities that might help for that. And red, there's other activities. So just taking deep breaths, using some of their calm down skills, figuring out the size of the problem they're having, maybe just doing a physical activity to kind of get that energy out. It's important to practice these skills when a child is well regulated in the green zone so that they know the routine and what is expected when they are actually upset and they lose kind of those verbal skills that you can usually get through to them with. And here's a link that has more information about how to implement the zones of control at home and kind of get more of those visuals and skills that help children identify their emotions and deal with emotional difficulties.
Visuals used in daily schedules and routines. What is a visual? Well, it's simply something you can see. It's the body language, it's environmental cues, it's the McDonald arches, a stop sign. It's pictures of someone doing something, it's objects, or it's written language. Visuals give you the expectations, it gives directions, it supports communication, and it's the most effective way for us to gain information about what is happening in our environment. A visual schedule or a routine is simply a graphic representation of scheduled tasks and activities. Here is some examples of visual schedules and routines. The first one is a daily schedule that starts from wake up and goes to bedtime. This is an example of a morning routine. Wake up, brush your hair, to brushing your hair, brushing your teeth example. So taking a scheduled activity within a daily schedule and breaking it down into smaller pieces, and a written schedule. We use these visuals to help a child organize their activities. It helps predict what is happening, in what order. It lets them know about special events or changes in their day that can help provide some of that control that they seek. That also helps prevent some of that challenging behavior that can come up. It increases and supports communication, and a visual remains present after words are spoken. It's always something that they can refer back to. It's not a constant nagging reminder from an adult. And it helps them develop independence and self-esteem. Here is an example of a video or an example of a routine, teeth brushing, which I simply used a whiteboard, drew some pictures, and wrote down the words of the routine. And there's that visual right there for her to see. Thank you, and here are some resources for picture downloads, how to make one, and YouTube tutorials as well.
Hi, this is Raina Sigurdsson, and I will be talking about using first then visuals and transition strips and supporting children on the autism spectrum and all children in general. I've used a lot of these strategies with my own child who's fairly neurotypical, and she's around 2. Okay, so visuals to support transition. So basically when we think about this, we're thinking about when kids have a difficult time doing a task or moving from one task to another, typically a task that's not as preferred as the one that they have a difficult time going to. And we can help those by making the expectation that we have visual, breaking the steps down into really small pieces, and then adding a reinforcer, like something that the child really likes when they've completed the task. So when we're thinking about those things, when we're making a visual, we want to think about how does the student or the kid identify or connect with the visual? How do they know when the time is up? And what's the first thing that the kid's body has to do? What's the process for getting to the next thing? And what's the next thing, like the new place or the new task that the kid is going? And then also what's in it for the kid? That might be the most important step. Thinking about what's their motivation for doing this task. And sometimes it's not going to be the task in and of itself, and it's not even going to be for social praise. It's going to have to be, you're going to have to start with giving some sort of physical motivator like a candy or a preferred toy. Okay, so we think about possible difficult tasks at home. These can include eating a meal at the table, cleaning up toys, completing schoolwork, completing a specific chore, going to bed. So the first thing you're going to want to do is gather materials to make visuals. You'll need things like paper, cardboard, back of a cereal box, anything like that. Writing utensils. I would recommend if you want to use something that you can use over, if you have dry erase markers, that's an option. And then packing tape or Scotch tape, and that's if you want to cover your surface after you've drawn it on the cardboard or paper. If you want to cover it up with the Scotch tape and then use dry erase markers on it, that will make it easier to be able to reuse it. And then also reinforcers that your kids will like. So something they do not have access to all the time, like fruit snacks, small candies. You can also use toys that they don't have regular access to. Okay, so here is an example of the first then visual. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna draw the non-preferred or less preferred task on the left side under the first label, and then draw the reinforcer or preferred task under the then label. You can see a couple of examples in the bottom. First, put toys away, then bubbles. This one on the right side of the screen was the one that I had made for my daughter, who was not wanting to eat, but we were actually planning to go to the Carousel Mall later. So I said, okay, first eat, then Carousel Mall. Here's a transition strip example. This was for a little girl who did not want to basically stop doing what she was doing and go to the table. So we basically drew kind of the steps. We drew a picture of the student and then a timer. So showing like the phone timer, in 2 more minutes, the phone timer is going to go ding, and then it's going to be time for you to go sit down at the table. And when you sit down, you get whatever the treat that was reinforcing for her was. So just to kind of show her those steps or show the child those steps that they need to complete. And so that it kind of helps them picture in their minds and kind of map out in their minds what their bodies are supposed to be doing, and gives them time to prepare for that. Here's another example. So it's helping that child to identify with the visual and understanding when the time is up. So it's more concrete when they hear a time timer than if you just say a couple more minutes. So if you can give them a warning of time, like 2 more minutes and then blank, 1 more minute and then blank, and then they hear the timer, that's really helpful for kids. And it also helps the kid with initiating. What's the first thing the kid's body has to do? So, I've even done sometimes where I have a stand up. If the kid is sitting down, the first thing their body has to do is stand up. The next thing their body has to do is walk to a specific location. And then it also gives them an idea of where they're going and also what they get out of it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anna Morehouse and I'm an autism consultant. I'm going to be talking to you about social stories. Social stories were created back in the early 90s by a woman named Carol Gray, who's an educator that works with children with autism spectrum disorder. It is a great tool that is used to take social information and present it in a concrete and visual format. It's really effective in helping to pull out those key components that our child might be missing and presenting it to them in a way that they can understand. In addition, social stories are great for promoting self-awareness and reducing anxiety, as well as self-management. There are specific steps that you want to follow when you're going to write your social story. You want to first think about what you're going to target, or a very specific area or concern or need. You might think about particular situations that your child has difficulty with, or upcoming event that might be causing that child some anxiety. You want to make sure that when you write a social story, you focus on one story at a time. So once you've decided what you're going to target, you are going to gather information. You might sit down and talk to your child about it and gather some information from them. If they are unable to tell you, you are going to need to observe. You might also try checking in with their teacher. They might have some insight. And then you're going to write your story. But understand that you might need to revise or edit your story, and that's okay. When you're introducing your story, you're going to pick a title that really addresses the specific topic. So for example, it might be about making mistakes or standing in line. And it can also take the form of a question such as, hey, what's a tragedy? Your body's going to dive into the details of the specific event, and your conclusion is just going to reinforce the information you're trying to share or teach. Typically, social stories are written in first or third person. So first person is using words like I, me, mine. So you're writing it as though you're your child. Third person is he, she, we. And you also want to pay attention to, is this something that happened in the past? Is this something that's going on right now? Or this is relating to a future event? I gave you an example here of a first person social story. It's called Making Mistakes. If I make a mistake on my work, it's all right. Everyone makes mistakes. After making a mistake, I can go back and fix my mistake. I will try to remember not to make the same mistake twice. If I do make the same mistake, I can go back and fix it again. Here's an example of a third person. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but it's just an example. There are times when we all have to stand in line. It is nicer if we can all take turns to do something. When we stand in line, we know who has the next turn. We stand in line at school. When it's lunchtime, we get in line to get our lunch. We all know whose turn is next. This way, it makes lunchtime easier. When you're writing your social story, you want to make sure that you are having a very positive and patient tone. You want to use encouraging language. Further, you want to avoid very definitive words. Like you don't want to say never and always and you must, but instead you want to use words like often or sometimes, we may or usually. And also pay attention to your explanations. Remember that our kids are very literal and concrete. This is not the time to use idioms like things are up in the air or that costs an arm and a leg or metaphors like big as a bear. You really want to make sure your language is very literal and concrete. If you're using terms that your child does not know or understand, you're going to teach them what those terms mean in your story. Social stories provide answers to questions that students on our spectrum may not necessarily understand or even know to ask. So you're providing clarification. You're taking this social abstract concept and you're making it concrete. When you write your story, you want to pay attention to your child's understanding. So the length is really going to be dependent on what your child understands, their attention span, their interest, and their learning style. Additionally, whenever possible, if you can incorporate their interests or special talents, you tend to have better buy-in by the child. You want to make sure when you get to the body of your social story that you really address those WH questions. So if it's describing the content, like where is it taking place, any time-related information, who's going to be there, who are the important key components in the story, important cues to pay attention, like what's going to happen, what are the expected behaviors, what are the expected statements, how this is going to happen, and most importantly, why, the reasoning behind, the rationale behind the social situation. Often our kids really have difficulty with the how and the why. So when you're implementing, now you've written your story, you're going to implement. You want to make sure that it's a calm time for your child, not when they're upset or frustrated because they're not ready to learn. You're going to use a very friendly and gentle tone, and you're just going to introduce your story in a very matter-of-fact way. It's going to be very straightforward. Like you're going to say, for example, I wrote a story about a snack, and let's read it together. You want to review the social story daily or just before the event. So for example, if you wrote a social story about making mistakes and your child is having a really tough time with making mistakes while they're doing math, you're going to read it before doing their math assignment. Give it about a week. Social stories are not miraculous. They don't change things overnight. So review it with the child for about a week. And if you're seeing that it's not working, you might need to add more information or detail. You might want to add some pictures. And you might also consider pairing it with the reinforcement system. So just to summarize, remember that social stories is a process of or a way of taking abstract concepts or social concepts and making them concrete using text, illustrations, and titles. I hope this helps. Thank you.
Today we discussed how to use first then boards and language with your child. This is a great tool to get your child to do what you are asking of them, followed by a reinforcer. We also talked about identifying the emotions your child is feeling through the zones of regulation. These strategies are important tools in understanding how your child is feeling and what they need. In our presentation, we discussed the use of social stories. This is a great tool to help students understand what is expected of them. Lastly, we discussed the importance of establishing routines and structure in your day through the use of daily schedules. Overall, a lot of information was shared today. It can be overwhelming to hear so much at one time. Try choosing one strategy to try it first, and then incorporate more strategies as your child starts responding. It might take several days for your child to adapt or change his or her behavior, and that's okay. These are challenging times and circumstances. You've got this. We've also provided some fun activities and resources to do with your child during this unique time. Check them out here.